Big data can be defined as extremely large data sets analyzed computationally to reveal patterns, trends, and associations relating to human behavior. The more data available, the easier it is for companies to identify a person's psychographics, demographics, professional status, influences, and challenges. We as a group have studied both the beneficial and the potentially harmful sides to big data. During this presentation, however, we will leave it up to you. Is big data a friend or a foe? This is Joe. Joe is a 25-year-old American. He works in Walmart 5 days a week. Joe benefits from big data while engaging in his hobbies, both online and offline. His hobbies include shopping, travel, and talking to his pen pal. Joe is also interested in photography, but he finds it difficult to identify phone models with high-quality cameras that are in his price point. Last week, Joe received his Christmas bonus. He decided to browse online for a new phone and a potential holiday destination. During this time, he encountered both active and passive data sharing. He enabled cookies and provided personal information when signing up to platforms, knowing this would help customize his content. As he continued to browse for a phone, he was pleasantly surprised with the personalized suggestions he was receiving based on his previous behaviors and searches. He noticed that all phones being advertised to him had great cameras and prices within his budget. He was particularly drawn to two phones, the iPhone 12 and the iPhone SE. Joe spotted the chatbot in the corner of the screen, asking, "How can I help you today?" He clicked into it to ask the virtual assistant a few questions. Within minutes, the chatbot had written up the main differences between the iPhone 12 and the iPhone SE. After analysing the two options, Joe decided to buy the iPhone SE due to its similar performance compared to the higher-end models but its drastically lower price point. Joe learned that this was Apple engaging in versioning pricing, which uses big data to help marketers understand which customers want different product versions and the prices they are willing to pay.
Joe entered his personal details to make an account with Apple, and he opted in for their email subscription. He was told he would receive follow-up emails from Apple, which would enhance the post-purchase stage of his consumer buyer journey. These emails would give Joe the chance to share his opinion on the phone and give detailed feedback to the company. Joe providing this data helps Apple to better understand what their customers want. By doing so, they can strengthen their customer relationships. It also allows them to make improvements and alterations in order to develop newer and better products. Prior to COVID-19, Joe would shop by foot or in catalogue. He realised that the big data collected online was hugely beneficial in saving him a lot of time. He no longer had to queue in long lines or filter through hundreds of pages to find his ideal phone or compare potential options. That evening, Joe returned to his laptop. He had two new emails, one of which included a 20% off coupon for the Holiday Inn Resort, a hotel he had been admiring earlier on in the day. It was addressed to his name and it stated that the coupon would expire in 24 hours. Joe jumped at the opportunity to book the hotel for a weekend away as he did not want to miss out on the discounted rate. After saving the Holiday Inn website in his browser, Joe recommended it to his friends, explaining that they had fantastic money-saving deals and personalised emails which made him feel secure and welcome.
Joe's friend Mark decided to go on the trip last minute, but was charged substantially more for his accommodation. Joe discovered that this was because the hotel was engaging in differential pricing by using big data to give different prices for the same product based on the reason and approach for their purchase. Joe's curiosity of the ways in which big data was positively affecting his consumer experience led him to examine his own workplace, Walmart, and how they use big data in their operations. He discovered that the company operated an online data analytics cafe where all employees could go to access data to solve everyday problems they experienced. Joe worked in the grocery department of Walmart and was confused why their grapes were not selling. He used the cafe to try and make sense of the problem, and through big data, he was able to determine that pricing miscalculations were made, leaving the grapes being priced much higher than other stores. Joe was grateful that big data could quickly solve this problem so no further sales were lost.
Joe is a frequent user of social media platforms such as Facebook and uses these websites to keep in touch with friends all across the world. However, each online interaction that Joe has leaves a trail of data with which third-party data brokers can then use to build an online modeled avatar of Joe and his online friends. Here we can see Joe's online avatar, which can only be constructed as a result of big data, which then allows the aforementioned data brokers to engage in a marketing concept known as micro-targeting. Micro-targeting refers to a series of demographic and attitudinal traits which can be used to influence Joe's actions and thoughts. This advanced psychogeographic segmentation is only possible at such a scale through big data. Micro-targeting is not only used in commercial environments, but also used to sway democratic elections by tracking voter habits, which subsequently tailors political messages related to the voter's specific interests. Back in 2016, Joe participated in an online personality quiz called This Is Your Digital Life. In actuality, Joe was really participating in the now infamous Cambridge Analytica scandal, which gave the data mining firm access to Joe's data, which effectively targeted Joe and millions of other Americans to alter their voting agenda in the 2016 US presidential election. In an article written in 2018 by Jonathan Heawood, the author described the widespread use of microtargeting as a democratic crisis and how it will negatively impact on all our lives, just like Joe's. The misuse of big data has the power to not only affect democratic elections, but also authoritarian governments' rule over its citizens, as we will see in the subsequent section. Another negative aspect on how big data affects Joe is through observing the daily life of his pen pal called Lingwei. Lingwei is a 25-year-old shop assistant who lives in the Xinjiang region in China alongside Uyghur Muslims. The unregulated collection and use of big data by the authoritarian Chinese government has enabled them to implement a surveillance system where large data sets about Chinese citizens are being collected and analysed to fuel a nationwide social credit system. For Lingwei, this big data-enabled surveillance state means that the CCP can track every purchase, manoeuvre and interaction of Lingwei's to give a credit score. If Lingwei's credit score falls due to perceived negative behaviours, she may receive state sanctions from the CCP. The Chinese government has unregulated access to the data points of China's 1.6 billion citizens, where big data has enabled the government to analyse this data through machine learning algorithms and thus punish any perceived negative behaviours. What the CCP perceive as negative behaviours stand in direct contrast to fundamental human rights, such as the freedom to practice religion without fear of persecution, which the Uyghur Muslims in China simply cannot do. So how does this all relate to marketing? Well, vicarious learning refers to a marketing behavioural modification concept which attempts to change behaviour by having an individual observe the actions of others and the consequences of those behaviours. When Lingwei is browsing the news, she will be exposed to images and videos of Uyghur Muslims being transported to re-education camps, where the aforementioned state sanctions of a low social credit score has forced the internment of Uyghur Muslims for simply practicing their religion. As vicarious learning outlines, Lingwei's daily behaviour may have been altered unbeknownst to her due to the observation of the negative consequences that practicing religion has on a Chinese citizen's social credit score, which is ultimately fueled by big data. Lingwei's fundamental human right to freely practice religion is now at risk due to the unregulated use of big data by authoritarian governments.
It is clear that in many ways, Joe has benefited from big data. However, we have also seen how it can be used to negatively impact both Joe and Lingwei's lives. GDPR is the most robust regulation on big data. Companies must now ask for explicit consent to gather users' data, and they must also specify the purpose for which it will be used.
So, what is the future of big data and how will this impact on Joe and Zhang Wei's lives? Tristan Harris believes that we should reclassify companies such as Google as attention utilities, and they should be subject to licensing much like traditional media firms. They also think micro-targeting, recommendations and other nudges should be banned or minimised.
Shoshana Zuboff, author of The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, suggests that we should totally outlaw data markets, as they essentially use the human experience to predict and modify behaviour. She likens this to the way we outlaw markets in human organs or in slaves. Jaron Lanier advocates for realigning big data's financial incentives. He suggests that we should pay a monthly subscription to these sites, similar to how we pay for Netflix. We could then optionally sell this data back to these sites so that they would be directly serving us and not advertisers, therefore removing the incentive to modify our behaviour. These suggestions would decrease or even eradicate the negative effects of big data in Joe and Lingwei's lives. However, these proposals would also cause the marketing landscape to regress back to a less personalised model, and many of the benefits that Joe enjoyed, such as personalised ads, time, and monetary savings, would no longer be possible. So, to answer the question, is big data friend or foe? We as a team think both. As we have seen, the advantages of big data are overwhelming, and its importance in our digital society is fundamental. However, if big data is left unregulated, it can threaten human autonomy and our democracies. To ensure big data remains our friend, regulation is vital. Considerations, however, should be made to strike a balance between undoing the negative effects of big data whilst maintaining the positive.